Father in heaven, we call upon thy name in this moment, Lord, as we begin the second class of basic building skills, Lord, that you would have us learn. We ask your Holy Spirit to be with us, to lead us and guide us, Lord, and help us to retain the things that are good for us, Lord, and continue learning how to be practical and useful, Lord, in the outpost that you have set us to be. Thank you for everyone that is here. Bless each one individually in a special way. I ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. All right. Well, welcome to Carpentry class number 2. I will make a couple of very short announcements. Uh, Elder Bridges will be putting these videos on his channel, so you can get with Elder Bridges about how that will become available, and you can go ahead and do that through those means. So for those of you that were not here in the class before, but I'm also going to give my information right now. I'm going to write it on the board so that those of you that want to contact me and I can be of any kind of help or assistance or advice, we are more than glad to help in any which way possible. One of the things that we like to encourage in this building class has been something that was laid on my heart years ago, and this was that God's people would have an economy as God desired for them to have, as He did in ancient Israel, economy where people would help each other, where nobody was just moving in one direction and everybody else was left behind. And this has come in different ways. My initial thought was that we could get a network where we could all communicate each other, and we needed help, and we can reach out to each other and help each other. And some of this comes from some of the things that even in our community, where we live in an Amish community, where they practice that, they help each other. Recently, there was a big fire where 1,000 acres were burnt, and the Amish have a type of fund that they all contribute to. That if somebody's building burns down, they all have contributed funds, and they also contribute their time to come and rebuild. And so sometimes things that insurance don't cover and things like that, they have things set up in their economy that they help each other. And I believe John 17, God's going to want to see a unity in His people before He returns. That we are looking to help each other. Yes, brother.
Three other things you might want to add to the Amish, if anybody live around the Amish, is that they usually have their own sawmills, and their wood is cheaper than what you could buy at Home Depot.
Really? Yes.
Yes, thank you for that. We actually shared a little bit of that about yesterday. We in the community we live, we have a sawmill, and we regularly get wood from them, and it's sometimes a fraction of what you would pay in a lumber yard. There's benefits, but like I said before, I believe that the Amish are blessed that we are in their community, and I say that humbly because God has sent us as messengers into all different kindreds, tongues, and people, including the Amish. They have things that God has given to us that we need to share with them. And they have things that we should have learned from them, in terms of economy. So this brings me to my third point. I'd like to encourage people that are moving to the country sometimes. If you notice, one of the quotes that I gave you yesterday was that, Jesus did not assume to do everything carelessly. And so when you want to set up your home in the country and set up your outpost, sometimes you will need help. And if your funds are limited, and your resources are limited, then sometimes you can gather enough for materials and set up a work bee. And you can reach out to me for that, and we can find volunteers. And sometimes all you need is 1 or 2 people that know what they're doing, and the rest can be volunteers. And it can be a learning experience. It could be a working experience, and it could be in doing a brunt of the work that needs to be done. Perhaps not all of the project, but the focus of the work can be done in different areas. So keep that in mind, that we need to have a bigger mindset than what we have had thus far, of just me and look at me, I'm here, where are you? We have to say, how can I help you? And I believe that the Lord has blessed us tremendously by serving and helping others. And so we see the Lord only blesses you to bless others. He doesn't bless you to harbor, to self, to hoarder. No. Blessings are not for that, brothers and sisters. The blessings are always to share, and that's how they multiply. If you remember when Jesus prayed over the fish and the bread, as they continued to share, what happened? It multiplied. It multiplied. There's a lot of object lessons in the things that Jesus teaches us. And so blessings are meant, I have people sometimes ask me, this is quite an investment. It's a lot of money in this. Look, put it in prayer first. If your budget allows and the Lord allows, think in the lines of, now that I have this, I may only use it once or twice a year, but how can I help others? And we do that with our rotor tilling machine. We have different equipment on the outpost that we use, and we take it to other people's property and help them. For instance, we have a bobcat that we're using right now on a family that's moving out of the city into the country. And so we went over there to cut a bunch of trees down, and it makes it a lot easier when you have a bobcat to lift up these heavy trunks. Yes, and we took our chainsaws, and then in another occasion we took our log splitter, and whatever you have, use it to bless others, and the Lord will continue to protect what you have and to bless you with more. And so praise God for that. And that's the economy that God wants to see in His people. I believe that God's going to want to, we're told that we should memorize John 17. And that unity that is in John 17, God is going to see in His people. And I believe, and I want to be part of that team. Amen? Part of the 144,000, right? Yes. There will be a unity. That's where the strength will be. It will be in the unity. All right. Let me go ahead and begin here. I'm going to go ahead and skip those. I want to start here. You can hardly read it, but it says, build what is needed and restore what is broken. And I believe this is what Jesus does. Jesus rebuilds what needs to be rebuilt, right? And He restores what is broken. Whatsoever thy hand findeth to do, do it in with thy might. For there is no work, nor device, nor knowledge, nor wisdom in the grave whether thou goest. Don't procrastinate. What you're going to do is set your mind and prayerfully and set your mind to do it. I was just talking with a gentleman this morning and during breakfast, and he started rebuilding his deck. Now he's running into situations where he needs help, but that's the only way you're going to learn. You get into something, you don't understand how to solve it completely, but now the Lord wants to lead you and guide you and give you the understanding and what step to take next. Education 221, paragraph 1. Amen. The minister, the missionary, the teacher will find, and the verse, I'm sorry, was Ecclesiastes 9:10. You're welcome. The minister, the missionary, the teacher will find their influence possesses the knowledge and skill required for the practical duties of everyday life. And often success, perhaps the very life of the missionary, depends on this knowledge of practical things. The ability to prepare food, to deal with accidents and emergencies, to treat disease and build a house or a church is needed. Often it makes these things different difference between success and failure in his life work. And what this is saying is that some of you have heard of the School of Medicine that was established, right, in not too far from Nashville, where Sister White had a vision of, they were on a steamboat, and the steamboat broke down. And where it broke down, as they were ready for repairs, Sister White, the Lord took her to this property that was there for sale, and it was a horrible place, according to the elders that were with her. And they practically wept. They said, "This is a place where we're going to set up an education center." But in this education center, they taught the gospel. They taught evangelism, they taught medical missionary work, and they taught how to build. So what they did is that when they built this place, they were working on it with the people that were being called to the school. And Sister White said that this was going to be the pattern for true education throughout the world. Obviously, the enemy was not happy with that. And so that finally ended, but the idea is that, the best form of preparation is also in a physical form, and I remember one time we went to the Philippines, and we went with a team of evangelist team, dental team, and then a building team, and we built a church in 2 weeks, and it was quite a project, and it's quite a thing that to be able to now, the Lord can use us now even greater in missionary work. And we just got to see a beautiful country, lovely people in the most poorest conditions. We saw, like I mentioned before, the dormitory that was over there in the Philippines, and the people were just so kind and so loving, and it's just a blessing. I'll share with you here another quote. The benefit of manual training is needed also by professional men. A man may have a brilliant mind. He may be quick to catch ideas. His knowledge and skill may secure for him admission to his chosen calling. Yet, he may still be far from possessing a fitness for his duties. An education derived chiefly from books, leads to superficial thinking. Practical work encourages close observation and independent thought. Rightly reformed, it tends to develop that practical wisdom which we call common sense. It develops ability to plan and execute, strengthens and courage and perseverance, and calls for the exercise of tact and skill. And this is incredible because you're going to need a lot of common sense. I'm going to need a lot of common sense. People that have, my father never worked in anything that has to do with construction or carpentry. I am completely opposite of what my father was. My father didn't know, but I mean, he went to the books. I mean, he was a major in business administration. He studied law. I mean, he was just books, books, books. But now, by the grace of God, my dad lives in 5 acres that, we moved them close to us. And he is active outside and, 75 years old, and he's just outside all the time. He's got his garden. Never in my whole life would I have imagined my father, but he's applying this, he's applying it. He still likes to read in his books and he's on the computer, but he spends a lot of time outside as well. And his common sense is being activated. Yes, yes. Jesus is our example. Amen. There are many who dwell with interest upon the period of his public ministry, while they possess unnoticed the teachings of his early years. I always ask people, how long was Jesus' ministry? How long? 3.5 years. But his greater ministry was almost 30 years in home. So he did 30 years in home ministry, right? 3.5 years out. So he did more preparation in the home before he did a public ministry. And that's where my family and I want to be careful. We wanted to set up a restaurant, a plant-based restaurant, but we said, you know what? We thought about it and we prayed about it. It's going to consume too much time of our children. And so we're going to have to put that aside. Anything that we can do, we'll just do it from the outpost, do it from home. And we want to wait. And when they're bigger, when they can work with us, and then we'll go ahead forward. Because ministry has to come, public ministry has to come second. Your first work, we're told in prophet, in spirit of prophecy, that our first mission field is the home. Is the home. It makes no good to go out and start public ministry if we're not. So 30 years he developed in the home. But it is in his home life that he is the pattern for all children and youth. It was in his home life. The Savior condescended to poverty that he might teach how closely we in a humble lot may walk with God. He lived to please, honor, and glorify his Father in the common things of life. And every youth who follows Christ's example of faithfulness and obedience in his lowly home may claim those words spoken of him by the Father through the Holy Spirit. Behold my servant whom I uphold, mine elect in whom my soul delighteth. Beautiful words. And and that's why it takes tomorrow morning, man, we're going to talk a little about our children. We have to teach our children that what they do it unto the Lord. And that has to help mold their character towards the things that they do, not in a negative form. All right. So today, brothers and sisters, we're going to try to go over some of the things that deal with, building a structure. This could be building a cabin, and we're going to talk a little about the different components in building a cabin. Now, this is one way, not the only way. There's different methods, that one can use, that one can build the deck for a cabin or for a small home. So here we have a structure, the floor, with what is called with a post and beam structure. Okay, these are pier and beam. So these piers are in the ground. We're going to talk a little bit about that. And there's a beam, and then you run your joist, and this portion that sticks out on each end is called a cantilever. A cantilever is something that projects beyond. That's the cantilever. And then the floor joist looks like 2x12s because of the span. This may be like a 12, could be a 14-foot span, and so they have to have a decent amount of joist, to span that. So how do we get started? Okay, so all right. So just some of these sonotubes you can purchase, and they already come. They're made out of cardboard, and they come in different dimensions. The 12 inches is the diameter of your sonotube. And this sonotube is used, I'm going to back it up here, is used only at the very top. What you do with the sonotube, you use that at the top, that which projects out of the ground. You don't bury it in the ground. What happens is if you were to dig the hole, and you dug it, you use post hole diggers or a shovel, when you put the sonotube in there and you fill it up with concrete, it'll just want to tilt because there's void around it. So you want to drill, you want to dig the hole, right? If you want to build a pier, you dig the hole with your post hole diggers or a shovel, and then you only use the sonotube at the very top to keep keep the elevation that you want, and to keep it in line where you're going to put your fastener. And I'll talk a little bit more about that.
How deep?
I beg your pardon?
How deep?
It all depends. That's a good question. Where if you don't, there is what is called frost protection. Frost protection is to protect any structure from the freezing ground to get underneath it and cause it to heave, because frozen ground will lift up. It'll lift up. And for instance, in Wisconsin, the frost line is 4 feet. So ground can freeze all the way down almost to 4 feet. So imagine frozen ground. Yes. Yes. We get very, very cold temperatures. We can have sometimes 15, 20 days of 15 below zero. Yes. Yeah. And so the ground just continues to freeze and to freeze and to freeze. And what happens is when ground gets underneath a footing, it'll tend to lift it up. And then once it lifts it up, when it thaws out, it comes back down, up and down. So what happens is it'll create movement in the structure. Now there is instances where you don't have to do everything below frost. Like for instance, we built the pole barn and we poured the slab, and all I did was pour the thick slab in the perimeter, but I didn't go below frost because it's just a pole building. I can deal with it moving a little bit. There's no drywall, I'm not worried about cracking or anything like that. So there's instances where you don't have to go that deep. But if you're looking for frost protection, that's the first answer. The second answer to how deep is going to be how soft or how firm your soil is. If if you have 6 or 8 inches of black topsoil, and then other loose materials, you want to get to where you have a decent solid base, where it's going to sit on a good bearing ground. Whether it's a post, if you're dropping a post for your pole barn, or whether you're doing a footing for a structure, you want to make sure that you get to solid ground. Okay, remember and remember that when you dig this out, you're going to want, if you're going to do concrete, you're going to want concrete to fill up that hole, and then do this at the top. And I'll continue to show you further. We're going to see some more images. Here he's basically taking a strap to go around it to mark the perimeter. So there's a couple ways you can do that. You can take a pencil or a marker, and if I had it if I had the sonotube here, I could just take. I'm going to show you and see. I hope this illustration will give you the idea. You're going to just have to imagine that I have my sonotube here. So I have my pencil here, and I have the edge of my sonotube, and I just roll it, and I just continue to mark it, and I continue to roll it. You see, and I continue to roll it. So now I have a mark all the way around the sonotube. Or lay a flat piece of metal or anything that's flat. Doesn't even have to be metal. It could be a flat piece of cardboard. You make the circumference around the sonotube, and then you can scribe it and cut it to the lengths that you need. Okay. Here he has poured the concrete, and you can see he's doing what on top. You do a lightly tap to get the concrete to vibrate down, and then you screed with a straight edge at the top. And this is what he's doing now. He's striking the top with a screed just to level it out, and then you set your anchor after the concrete is fresh. This is just, if you're going to use an anchor, this is one anchor that you can use. It's not the anchor that you have to use, but this is an example of one anchor where you're going to sit, your joist, because this will keep your beam, from tending to tip over, and it'll also keep your beam from winds wanting to lift up the structure. Depending where you're at, sometimes some folks live where there's high wind. If you live where there's high wind and you're building your home, you got to make sure that everything is being strapped down. Yes. No, that is actually it's just an anchor plate. Yes, it's an anchor plate where your beam would sit. That would be more designed for a beam versus a joist, and I'll explain a beam and a joist in a little bit. Yes. I beg your pardon? Where would you use rebar? You can use rebar to strengthen the pier. You can drop some rebar into it, And this way, in case that pier ever tends to crack, it won't separate. The rebar is a reinforcement, is a concrete reinforcement. It's called a concrete reinforcement because it reinforces the concrete in the points of stress. Okay, so yes, you could use rebar, but it's not mandatory, but it is a good idea to stick some rebar into the concrete while it's fresh. Yes.
So you're pouring the liquid concrete into the tube to
That's
make the circle.
that's correct.
But
That's
you
correct.
only show the top part of it, how do you get the bottom part of it out of the ground if you pour the concrete in?
Okay, so first of all, let me see if I have an image here where it's framed. No? Okay. So here, he doesn't show the frame, but what I like to do, when I put my sonotube, I'll put, and he has it back there. Can you see that board back there? Okay. That board back there, you put 2 stakes in the ground, or 4 stakes in the ground, but 2 is more than sufficient. You put a stake on this end and stake on that end. You dug it out, you already dug it out. And then that board, you're gonna put your sonotube on, and you can drive a nail into the board so that it stays fixed, steady, so it stays steady. Because you've already laid out where you're gonna put your post. You already know where it's at. And if you were here yesterday, you remember I talked about a dry line? I talked about marking spray, okay? And I'm gonna give you 3 fundamentals. I like what Pastor Davis said the other day when he was talking about the building class. If you learn the basics of building, you can work off of that in anything. And I'm gonna make a small pause right now because I wanna give you this before we continue so that it begins to resonate in your mind. Square, did I spell square correctly? Okay, square, plum, pl, p, pl, p, and b, right? Plum, square, plum, and level. Square, plumb, and level. We talked about these 2 yesterday. Can you remember? Plumb and level. It is important to always do everything that you do, make it plumb and level. And remember, I talked about a a, um, a level, a line level, that little level that hangs on the line. If you have a long distance, like for instance, like that first image that I showed you, and you don't, and you don't want, and here, I'm sorry, here, we want this perfectly level. You can use that line level from one end to the other and put in the ground reference points where you're going to put your markings where you're going to have the elevation of that. So that line, now there's another thing called a water level. Have you ever, anybody ever heard of a water level? Water level is a plastic tube that you fill in with water. And this was used before, all the time, before lasers came around. So you fill it in with water, and it could be a 50-foot, 20-foot, 30-foot. And once it's filled with water, some of you people used to put a little coloring in the water so that you could see it clearly. If I was to hold a water line, and maybe next time I'll do that, on one end or the other, once that water in that plastic hose seeks its level, I'm going to have a perfect line here and a perfect line over there because water is going to seek its own level. So once I get all the air out of it, and he's holding it, someone's over there, someone's holding it here, or I even go lower, I can have now a reference point, a level reference point. Okay? So my point is that level, plumb, and square. What is square? Can anybody tell me?
90 degrees is perfect.
A 90-degree angle, right? A 90-degree angle, or a right angle. Okay? This is very important. When you do this, the reason it's so important is because when you begin to lay down your plywood, everything's going to line up in the centers where it belongs. When you begin to do your partitions, when you begin to do a bathroom, you ever seen bathrooms where the tile is kind of starts in one end and then it kind of takes an angle? It's not square, right? Yeah. So that can present a lot of problems. I mean, I've done a lot of kitchens, a lot of bathrooms, and kitchens and bathrooms that have not walls that are plumb or floors that are level. It's a challenge to work with, you know? So you want to do as best as you can to make sure that you follow these 3 principles: square, plumb, and level. Okay? And the reason for that is I was getting to this point here. When you lay this out, you want to make sure that you lay it out appropriately. And I'm going to give you a technique that's used to square to square out a building or to square out anything. I'm gonna show you this technique right now, and you're gonna want to make sure that you write it down. Let's see, and here it is, right here. So this is called the 3-4-5 method. The 3-4-5. The 3-4-5 method would require you from that same exact outer corner. If you're going to use the outer corner, from whatever point you start, you measure 3 feet, you measure 4 feet, and then from here you measure 5 feet. Because this will be movable. You can move it out or in if need be. You can't move the building, right? So you would measure 3 feet, you mark it here, you mark 4 feet, and then you pull from here 0, and you should intersect at 5 feet. If you intersect at 5 feet, it will always give you a perfect right angle. Now, the good thing is that you can work that in ratios of 3 feet or 30 feet, 30 feet, 40 feet, 50 feet. Or you can go 3, 4, 5, or you can go 6, 8, 10. What will be the next one? 12, 16, 20. Oh, what happened to my mathematicians? All right. Okay, so this fundamental formula will work in any situation that you want to square. Let's say, for instance, in this room, I wanted to make a wall in the center, and this wall is out of out of square, and that wall's out of square. But I need a wall perpendicular to this wall. So all I would do is up against the wall, make my first mark, go 3 feet, 4 feet, and then I would intersect 5 feet. And when I have that intersection of the 3, 4, 5, then I could go from that point, and I can bring my chalk line. Remember my chalk line? And now I have my chalk line. I put it on there, and now I have a perfect perpendicular line to that wall. Yes. So that is the 3-4-5 method, which is very, very practical. I use it all the time. It doesn't matter small or big projects. If you're building a very small shed, and I'm going to give you this ahead, but I'm going to give it to you right now. Just refresh it again when we get there. A lot of times you can use your plywood. If your framing is flexible, then you don't necessarily have to do the 3-4-5 method. When you put your first sheet of plywood down, the plywood already comes, the 4x8 sheets of sheeting already come at a 90 degrees. So you can use that to square up on a really small shed, if it's a really small shed. You just want to make sure that you're parallel, and that everything is cut to the same, that is to the same distance. So a triangle whose sides are in the ratio of 3-4-5 is a right triangle. Such triangles that have their sides in the ratio of a whole number are called, what is that? Pythagorean triples. There are an infinite number of them, and this is just the smallest. All right. There it is again, the 3-4-5. Okay. This is what somebody does, like in this case right here, if you have a long span of joist, you're going to do in the middle what is called solid bridging. This is going to be to reinforce the long joist that you have. This is called solid bridging. And this is one method that is used. You would put blocking and you would stagger it so that you have access to nailing them. See the face nails? Those are when you drive a nail on the face of a board, it's called a face nail. When you toenail is when you're driving it on an angle. But if I'm putting a board here and I'm nailing it from face on, it's called a face nail. So you face nail your solid bridging. Okay, these are other types of solid bridging. They do wood strapping, that'll also help. Cross bridging, and then, like I said, the block bridging or solid bridging. Here you see another deck for a home. Underneath it, there's a beam, and then the boards are not long enough to run it through the whole length, so they have to splice it there. But again, they do the solid bridging where it's necessary. This is just giving you an idea of what. Here's what we have as a foundation, and let's talk a little bit about how far apart should your studs go or joists go. There is what's called 16 inches on center. Has anybody ever heard of that? 16 inches on center and 24 inches on center. Those are usually the typical layout that people would use to frame either a floor or a wall. 16 inches or 24 inches on center. So what you would do, you want to compensate 3/4 of an inch. In other words, if I was to pull from this end, before I have my plywood, if I want to, or my sheeting, I want to lay out, I want to mark where all my joists will go. If I hook my tape measure and I start to mark 16, 32, 48, 64, 72, and so forth, what I'm going to end up is with when I end up with my 8 foot, when I end up with my 96 from the edge, I hook up here and I come across and I end up with 96 inches, which is 8 foot, right? When I lay that sheet down, that sheeting is going to end up to the edge. And when I put my next sheeting down, I'm not going to have nowhere to nail. So I need this sheet of 96 inches to end up in the center so that it can share, that joist can be shared with the next sheeting that comes in. And now I can nail both sheets on that and I can continue. But in order to do that, I need to reduce it. What did we say an actual dimension of a 2x is? 1.5 inches. What's half of 1.5 inches? 3/4 of an inch. Correct? Does everybody follow me? Remember we talked about this yesterday. So I need to reduce that by 3/4 of an inch. So instead of going 16 inches, when I hook up to here, I'm going to go, what is it? 15 1/4, and so forth. And on your tape measure, on all tape measures, at least here in the United States, because in other countries they use metric. But here, you see where I have my tape measure? See the 16? 32? 48? See how it's marked with the red? 64? 96. Okay? So when I initiate my layout and I hook it to the end of my structure, whether it's a wall or whether it's a floor, I'm going to compensate that by 3/4. So I'm going to go 95 1/4, 79 1/4, 63 1/4, 47 1/4, 31 1/4, 15 1/4, and obviously the full one is going to be at the end. So that now when I stagger my sheets, let's say on the next one I have to stagger them. Remember we talked about staggering yesterday? Okay, the next one is only going to go up to 4 feet, but that's okay. I've already made my compensation from that end. So it's 47 1/4, right? It's going to give me a 4-foot sheet right on the center of that joist so that it can share that nailing space with the next sheet. Does that make sense? And okay, so then that's going to be something that you want to keep in mind when you begin to lay out for your joist or for a wall. Anytime that you're going to hang a conventional sheeting, whether it's drywall is the same thing. You know, if you're going to do a wall, you want to do the same principle. At the beginning point, you're going to start compensating at 3/4 of an inch. Now, once you are in further and you're hooking up to a regular 2x joist, when you're, or let's say now, for instance, I've gone as far as I can. Now I'm going to hook my tape up to here. Now I can keep the 16 inches on center because I've already made my compensation at the beginning of the 3/4. Does that make sense? Yes. And if you have any questions, please feel free. To. And here's a picture, right, of how it will land 3/4 of an inch. You know, your sheeting now allows for the next one to have a nailing space, right, to allow to be nailed to. Okay, and here you have another example now. So what I just explained, in all your sheeting, it's all gonna fall in the center. Now, you imagine if I did not square that deck, if it's not square, you're gonna end up with a little, it's gonna start to run off, and now you have nothing to nail to. So it's important to have it square, correct? You wanna have that square. Here's your typical, I'm just gonna just kind of run this just to give you a little bit of introduction. This is a typical foundation with a treated sill plate. Keep in mind that anytime you have wood that's gonna touch concrete, it should be treated lumber. Otherwise, it'll tend to build, the concrete, with condensation, will build moisture. And moisture will build in between that wood and that concrete, and it'll eventually begin to decay your wood. So anytime you're going to make contact, anytime wood's going to make contact with concrete, you should use a treated plate, a treated wood. So your sill plate, which is the 2x4 that is laid on top of foundation, is anchored by these anchors that are in the concrete when it's fresh, and then from there you begin to build your floor joist. Those, for those that have a conventional foundation. Here's like the structure we were talking about earlier. Okay, this is the spacing in between that you're going to end up with. The first one is going to be 13 and 3/4, and everything after that is going to be 14 and a half. That's the blocking that goes in between. Okay, that's why those numbers are there. Remember we talked about the solid blocking? Yeah. So your first one is 13 and 3/4. Everything after that is 14 and a half inches. Okay. How do we make a layout for a wall? Let me see if, let me see, okay. These are called, and I'm gonna do this first. I'm gonna go ahead and talk about a wall first before I go. I'm gonna go to the layout. I'm gonna switch this around because I noticed that when I did the PowerPoint, I should have started at this point first and get you familiar with the wall. Now, this is a typical wood framing wall that is used here in the United States. This is going to be just about every home that is being built, that is being framed with rough carpentry. These are the way the walls are designed. You have here at the bottom what's called a sole plate or a bottom plate. Now, if this bottom plate is already on a plywood deck, do I need treated wood? No, right? Because it's not making contact with concrete. Okay. Then you have on the top, I'm going to go from the bottom to the top plate and a double top plate. In a exterior or in any partition walls, you're always going to have a top plate and a double top plate. And all that really is at the top of your wall, you have double 2x4 like this. Yeah. On the bottom, you only have one. Then you have your studs, right? You have your studs. And then at the top of the wall, you have double top plate. There's two reasons why you would have a double top plate. The first reason is if you have a joist here or a stud here, you have a stud here at 69 center, 69 center. This space between these two studs with a double top plate for this span is designed to be structurally acceptable if something should land in this area. If I had a single plate, I run the risk of it not bearing the weight of a joist. Let's say my joist run like this, and I have my double top plate here. With a double top plate, I have now the structural necessity for it to be strong and sustain the weight of anything right. A roof. Sometimes my rafters don't land exactly where my studs are at. My roof rafters may be landing in the middle of the two studs. Okay, and this double top plate is structurally sound. The second reason for that is because when you're building walls, you don't have a 25-foot 2x4 that you're going to put on there. So you're going to have to go more than one. So you do what is splicing. You put one here, and then you put another one here, and you continue. You follow? So that you continue to make that top plate a solid double top plate. So this is for rigidity, for the lengthwise. In the bottom, it doesn't matter because it all gets nailed, and it's not going to move on you. Right, it gets nailed to the floor. So those are the two main reasons why you have a double top plate. Yes.
So do you stagger it?
You stagger that.
For instance, this wall right here. This is way bearing.
Correct.
The roof is on top of it.
Right.
So how would you?
Okay, so I would frame my wall. That's a good question. And I'm gonna talk about this a little bit further, but I'll go ahead and do it now. You normally frame a wall. I'm gonna show you some images. Okay, like that. And you would stand here and you would drive your nails in there. You face nail them. And then you do the same thing with the bottom plate. You face nail it. Then you stand up your wall. Okay? You stand up your wall. Then you locate it where it's going to go. After that, you come with a ladder and you nail your double top plate. Now, sometimes you can nail your double top plate on there as long as you make sure that you compensate in case there's another wall going to be intersecting. Then you want the other wall to lay on top of it. You follow me? I forgot I had a handful of 2x that I had in the truck that I was going to bring down, and I forgot so that I can show you how they were going to line up. But that's how that wall would go. But yes, you would need a double top plate, you know, and especially on a bearing wall. Now, if it's just a partition wall, and we're doing some partition walls in here, I don't need a double top plate. If I'm gonna, like I said before, if I'm gonna run a wall from this post to that wall, and I want to make 2 rooms out of this, I only need 1 plate on the top, 1 plate on the bottom, because that's just a partition wall. It's gonna be a non-bearing wall.
Because of whatever, it's already low.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. There's no real bearing up there. It's just to build a wall to make a partition. You know. Now you have something between you. You know. And so now the other members. All right. The other now you have the first one is a stud. I think everybody's familiar with a stud. You know, the stud is a normal understanding of okay. Then you have what's called a king stud. A king stud is usually next to a door or window. Okay, not because you're going to have what is called a trimmer next to it. Okay, a trimmer is the one that's going to support this member up here, which is called a header. Okay, it's called a header. Here's the name of it. See the header? So these members are called headers because what you want, the reason you want, the way I have these now, depending on how much weight is above, you want that to sustain the weight because now all of a sudden, let's say I have a lot of weight coming down in the middle of that doorway. That weight's going to transfer down to this header, and that header is going to transfer across and down to that trimmer. Okay, so we're talking about transferring the weight, right? So that this doesn't bow or collapse on you when you put the weight over that door or window. Okay. Then you have what's called your cripplers or trimmers, crippler studs. These are the ones that go down here, or crippling studs are the ones that go in here. See these here? These are the ones that are, they're called cripple studs, okay? Then you have your sill plate, and that's gonna be all, this opening is gonna determine the size of window that you're gonna put. So you're gonna first have, let's say you're gonna do a wall, you're gonna first wanna make sure that you already have the window, and then you know what door is gonna be put in there, okay? If you're gonna put a 30-inch door, then you need a 32-inch by 82-inch door opening, because the height is always usually the same on an opening. Doors are usually standard 80 inches. And so you always allow 2 inches. The width of the door can vary. If you want a 36-inch door, you're going to have to add 2 inches. You would need a what? A 38-inch rough opening, right? Windows could be a little bit different. If you buy those plastic vinyl windows, which I said before, you can buy them new or you can buy them used. They actually have them now in a lot of places that you can recycle. The window, if it's a 3 foot by 3 foot window, vinyl window, you pretty much make it 3 foot by 3 foot, and the window manufacturer makes it less the size so that it gives right, so to slip in. Correct. All right. Again, here's the load bearing. Now, is this a load bearing wall?
Shouldn't be without a header.
Non-load bearing. See, this is just a flat 2x with studs on top of it. And then that transfers from the top down. So this is a non-bearing wall. There's no weight on it. Is this a bearing wall? Load bearing wall. This is a load bearing wall. So let's say, for instance, I had this wall in here and I bought the place, and you know what? I got this wall and I want to take it down. Well, let me just go get my hammer and let's take it down. No. Let's open it up and let's take a look. Okay, you know what? No, this is a bearing wall. So we're gonna have to put a header there, a bigger header, if we want the opening. Right? You can do something structurally, yes, to reinforce it. Correct. So you want to be able to determine a bearing wall with a non-bearing wall. Okay.
Now, question, that header, is that like a 2x10?
That would be like a 2x10 or 2x12, depending on how much weight is bearing above.
Double?
It's always going to be double, and that's a good question. So you do a double with half inch, because what is let's see, let's do some math again. What is the width of a 2x4? The actual 3.5 inches. All right. What's the thickness of a 2x4? 1.5 plus 1.5? 3. I'm short how much? A half an inch. So I need to build that up in the middle with half an inch of sheeting, whether it's half-inch OSB or half-inch plywood. Remember we talked about the different to make it up, right? So then now I end up with that, right? Now when I stand it on edge, now I got it flush with my 2x. See? Now everything is flush. Now everything is flush when I do this and I put my header in there. got my trimmer, right? And this is gonna match the width of that because I put my 1/2 inch in there, correct? Okay. Remember, I filled that in with 1/2 inch, right? Yeah. Okay. So yes, you build that up with 1/2 inch always. If it's a thicker wall, if it's a 2x6 wall, then you need to compensate that. With a 2x6 wall, you're gonna have to build it up some more. And there's a different ways of doing with a 2x6. But I'm gonna stick a 2x4 for now. But I can show you a 2x6 wall.
You, up in Wisconsin, you find you all use 2x6s more because of the weather?
Yes, actually, that's a good question. Because of us in that northern part, we are actually required to build with 2x6 because you need to get the insulation in there. Right. In fact, if you buy a mobile home down here, you probably don't want to take it up there because no, because they're not rated. They're not rated. Yeah, for the zone. The one I have is zoned for the area where we live, so we have all 2x6s on our mobile home. So it creates a better R value with the insulation that goes in there. Yeah. So it's not so much for structural, although it helps with structural because we have a lot of snow load on the roofs. So that's another thing too. The snow load on a mobile home down here may not work up there because you may have too much snow load and it'll cause that roof to collapse. That's how roofs are measured. They're measured by snow load weight. What they do is they take the average snow that falls a year in that area they find the maximum weight of snow that can fall, and it's how much pounds per square foot on a roof your roof can handle. If you go, to Florida, how much, compared to Wisconsin, it's night and day. You have no snow loads in Florida, you know. So again, this is just some of the items that we were talking about that are in a wall, exterior framing wall. You see your joist now, how they're landing on here. See all the weight bearing over this header. Yeah, the same thing here, right? Um, what was easy in the mobile home, I made some modifications, even though it was new. I took a window opening like this. It was a little bit more narrow, but I took a window opening and I just knocked it out. But I did not knock out the trimmers or the header, and I put a doorway. Because where we had a window, my wife wanted another door. I'm like, yeah, we can do that. And I opened it up, and I knew there was going to be a header there. I did not remove the header, and I did not remove the trimmers. If anything, I could add studs to it to adjust the opening, right? And that's all I did. And we created a window. We took a window and put a door where that was at. And the same thing with the door. You could put a sill and stud it up with cripples and turn that door into a window without ever uh, dealing and removing any structural member in there. And this is good because remember, some of you may move into an older home and you may want to do some modifications. Yes.
That was my next question. So if you had a mobile home that was built in Florida and you're up in the north and you realize that it doesn't have a stronghold, can you do modifications on that particular mobile home?
It probably would be a bit of a challenge, because you already have 2x4 walls. You could make it work. The first mobile home that we had was a 2x4 wall. It was very old. It was very outdated, and and we made it work. Chances are it's probably not going to collapse on you. But the thing is that the R value and the structure, especially on the roof, depending on who the manufacturer is, some of those mobile homes are made with very, very lightweight trusses that are not made for a lot of weight. Yeah, yeah, and I've seen some of those metal. It's like a dome type roof. Have you ever seen those on some metal? They're not very strong. They're not even meant to walk on. Yeah, yeah, and on my mobile home, you can walk on the roof, with no problem. But remember the snow load. They're designed to carry weight, from the snow. In the south, you don't have that problem like you do north. Yeah. Okay. The wall, top of wall plate, we talked about that. Cripples, just giving you some more ideas. All right. Here you have it in the actual field where you have. I'm sorry.
Can you go back?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
It's the same thing, right?
Yes. Yes. Now this is see, they used OSB for sheeting. Nothing wrong with that. They have factory manufactured trusses up there. I can see it by the gussets, by the steel plates. And you can see that that's a bearing wall. Of course, they're going to have those on there. And that, by the way, looks to be like a concrete floor. And then they have a treated plate in the bottom. because it's making contact with, yep, I can see the green there. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about wall bracing. Now, in this case, they put extra bracing. They put a diagonal. This T-metal, you come and you notch on the back side of it. Let's say these are my studs, my studded wall, right? I'll take my snap line and I'll put a chalk line. Remember how practical your chalk line is. You put your snap line, and then you'll run your saw and you create a kerf, a notch into the wood, so that you can drop that metal T that's there. Okay, the metal T, all it really is that's all it looks like. So you make this notch. Once you snap that line, once you make that line, you set that in there, and that helps. What sway brace is, it helps the building from doing this. Have you ever seen a leaning house? No sway bracing. Yeah, they never sway brace, and that's why new codes and new ways of methods of construction. But there's some older houses that you'll see that all they did was pick up the studs and they nailed the boards on the outside and they stood the walls up. Well, those walls, with the expansion and contraction of wood, with time, it just went. Yeah, yeah. So what this does is helps keep the sway bracing. Did I just back up there? Okay.
Is that required in all homes?
Sway bracing is required in all homes if you're building up to code. If you're building in some places, yeah, I've heard some places here in Tennessee or even Alabama, if you're far enough in the woods, you could build as you wish. But I still would recommend, right? Yeah, because it's you want to build so that your home does not sway. Now,
Wave race.
sway brace, yeah, or wall bracing. Wall bracing. Now, in this case, I will add that if you were to put plywood only, chances are you would be fine, because plywood has a rigidity in of itself. Okay, you cannot twist plywood that easily. And if it's well nailed, for instance, there'll be codes that you have to nail every 6 inches on exterior walls where they don't want that. So there'll be instances, but I mentioned this as a code, but I also mentioned it as for your own sake, that even if there is no code, you want to make sure that you nail it so that it doesn't move on you, so that it doesn't sway on you. You want to make sure you nail it so that it doesn't. And that's why I recommended. Remember the strip of nails that I showed you? What were they called? Anybody remember? Ring shank. Ring shank nails. Those nails go in there, and it's very hard to pull them out. So really, ring shank. R-A-N-G, shank. SHANK. And those, when they grab, they grab. They're hard, to pull out. And so those are nice to use when you're framing, because it's structurally sound. Okay. You can also use a 1x. This is more time consuming. You take a 1x, but in this case you wouldn't snap a line. You would lay it on top of your wood, because a 1x can have a small crown to it, and so you want to make sure that that. In fact, let me pause right there for 1 minute. I'm going to take a little commercial again, and I'm going to tell you how to determine a good piece of board. Sometimes you can deal with wood that has what is called a crown. A crown is going to be in this direction. Right, you have the arch on the edge of the board. So I have a crown. A bow is going to be when the flat side takes a belly. Okay, that's going to be your bow. A twist, obviously, is going to be that the board has a twist on it. Okay, so, and then a cup is when the grain causes this, and especially on a bigger wood, causes this to cup. Okay, and then so those are defects that sometimes are permissible and sometimes not. Okay, if you're gonna do if I'm gonna do a floor joist here, and let's say here's my floor joist from that wall to this wall, which way do you think I want my crown to face? Up, right? So I'm not gonna get rid of all my boards that I have because they have crowns. No, I'm just gonna look at them. Oh, there's my crown. I'm gonna put a pencil mark with an arrow facing up in case somebody else comes along and wants to nail it. Oh yeah, he's got it already marked. Crowns facing up. If you're gonna do a wall, you want to keep all your crowns in one direction. All right. Otherwise, you're gonna have if you have a crown on a wood, one's gonna go out, and now your wall is gonna go, like this. One's going in, one's going out. Okay. And if it's a really bad crown, you don't want to use it. Yeah, you want to stay away from it. And the same thing sometimes with a bow. Sometimes you don't want to deal with a wood that has a bow on it. So you want to check with bow, crown, cup, or twist. Okay, those are usually the things that you look for. You want obviously as straight as possible, right? You want to get a board that is as straight as possible when you go pick up lumber. So somebody will see you in the lumber yard. They'll see you at the lumber yard doing this, you know. They'll say, "Wow, that brother knows what he's looking for." Yeah, right? Or sister. Yes, or ma'am. That's right. 1x4 sway bracing. When I started building homes, we used to use that a lot. We don't use that anymore. It's just an older slide. And all you would do would where your wall is at, you would lay a 1x on top of there. You'd scribe it, and then you'd notch it out with your saw. You'd notch it out, you break it out, and then you slide it in there so that it's flush with this, and that acts as your sway brace. But then I remember we switched from that. We started using metal bracing.
When you start tampering with that, will that cause that to?
No, as long as as long as you're not exceeding, an abuse on the amount of stock that you're taking away. Yeah, so you're just taking 3/4 of an inch and only in a section. You're actually strengthening it. Yes, yeah, right. Yes, but yes, if you were to do some other modification that would be beyond, the norm, then you would probably compromise the integrity of the wall or the floor. Correct. Yeah. And so here's an example that they would require you to have, depending on how many stories you were going up, because the more weight you start stacking on a building, the more weight is on it, the more tendency is going to have to want to sway on you. So that's the old way we used to put the corner boards on there. Here's some guys just framing up a wall, and they're doing what's called temporary bracing. Okay, anytime you stand up a wall, you nail a plate, a piece of board at the bottom, or just a scrap piece of wood. You nail it on the bottom, and once you nail that on the bottom, you actually take your 2x brace, okay, and that goes to your wall, and you nail that at the bottom, and that keeps that wall while you're building the other floor or the other structure above it. Usually floor joist in that case would probably be your ceiling joist. So this is a temporary brace that you would do on a wall. Nail it down on the floor, nail it into there, and once you, what your wall? What do I want to do? Plumb the wall, then you nail it, right? Okay. Here's the way the wall is built, laying down. You get all your cripples, all your studs, all your openings, according to where everything's going to fall in place. Okay. Then you go ahead and you get several people. This is why I was saying, if you have the brunt of the work that needs to be done and you get a work bee, all you need is maybe one carpenter or two at the most that know what they're doing, and then everything else, you have hands that are helping, people that are bringing lumber, you show them where to nail, etc. And now you got some helping hands there. All right, what is he using there? Can anybody see that? The cat's paw. All right. Got somebody who remembered that. Remember that tool yesterday we talked about? Yeah. So he must have put a partition wall stud somewhere where it didn't belong or something, and he's got to remove it. He double checked it. And so he's now taking out the nails, which is the easiest way to pull those nails out. Otherwise, you're going to have a hard time getting those nails out. Yeah. Now let's talk about corners a little bit here. When you frame an outside corner, you're going to need backing. And you're going to need, for structural reasons and for backing reasons. When you do your outside corner, on the inside, you're going to want to be able to do your finish sheeting, whether it's drywall or paneling. So you're going to want a nailer on both sides. In this case, which wall went up first, the left or the right? The left wall went up first, right? Then the right wall went up first, and all it needed was just a stud at the end. This one has a stud block stud, and I'm going to show you a little bit about the corners here very quickly. Well, here, I'm going to go to corners in a little bit, but just refreshing our conversation earlier. See the way the load bearing works? Okay. Is that a load bearing or non-bearing? Non-bearing. So you can go ahead and take that wall down. There's going to be no problem, There's really no bearing there because it just got, and once you start removing this, you can see the direction that your joists are running. More than likely, the joists are running in this direction. Okay? They're probably not running in this direction. Because if they were, they wouldn't have that. And if they did, that would probably be bowing down, right? Yeah. See here again? This doorway, is that a bearing or non-bearing? It's a bearing, right? It's a bearing. You got joist, you got floor joist up above, and what have you. Okay, and that's your half-inch plywood, brother, that you were asking about. You fill that in with half-inch plywood in between to make up for that header thick width. Okay, going back to the corners. You have your traditional corner, which is a stud block stud. Okay, that gives you 1.5 inches, and the block another 1.5 inches, and you're still short how much? 1/2 inch. But that 2x will it'll take some of that 2x and it'll leave you a 1-inch nailer on this side. 1 inch is enough to get your sheathing or your drywall nailed up. Then when you stand up this wall, all you need is a stud at the end, because once you stand that up and you face nail that to the corner, now you have your backing for the inside. Okay, this is what they call a California corner. You have your nailer here, you have your nailer here. Obviously, they stand this wall up first, right? Why would you go with one or the other? Well, that all depends. If you're going to do a metal siding exterior, then it's no problem with this. And it's no problem with this. If you're going to do a conventional corners with whether it's vinyl or wood, you're going to have a little bit of a problem with this, because once you start to nail in this on this side for the corner, you're not going to have nowhere to put your nails to. You follow me? Yeah. And so you're going to be dealing with just sheathing. So you want a nailer more like this, so you can nail all around this side and all along this side. You have a solid corner where anywhere you nail in that corner, whatever you do in that corner. You remember the image I showed you of a corner board yesterday by any chance? Well, even so, if you look at any structure outside, anything that's built out of wood, you'll see that it has a corner. That's called a corner board. You have where to nail it, right? So I would always lean more towards a traditional corner. A lot of guys do California corners, but again, it all depends what you're going to do on your exterior. Yes.
So what if that corner is a post, like a 6x6?
Oh, if it's a post, you're wrapping her like say right here.
You know what I'm saying? Like you're doing a barn or whatever, and you're making sort of a pole barn structure. Your corner is not 2x4, it's more like 4x4.
Or a 6x6. Okay, then in that case, you will have no choice but to butt your. Let's say here's our 6x6, and here's your wall, and here's your wall. Then all you don't have no choice but to run your stud up to the post, unless you're gonna build it up that width, right? And if it's a 6x6, then you would need what? A 2x6, right? Then you can just run it up against it, and all you need is the one stud. Right. Yes. Okay. That would be if you have okay, let's take a look here now. Here you see a wall that stood up already. Then after your exterior walls are built, then you start to build your partition walls. Okay, these are all your partition walls, and you make compensation. Look at my double top plate there. See that? See the notch there? Well, it's not a notch, but it's a space in between, the double top plate, because I know right here is where my wall is going to be. So obviously, before I build that wall, I know where my rooms are going to go. I know where my windows are going to go. I know what rooms are going to have, right? Because that's how and normally you would do that either on a blueprint, or if you already know what you're going to build or what you want to make sure that you make all those compensations on your framing before you stand it up, because it's easier to do that than it is to get a ladder and go notch the top off to then try to slide it in there, right? Yes.
Like a puzzle.
It's like a puzzle. Yep, exactly. There's your outside corner. It's a conventional. See, there's the lap of the 2x, the double top plates. Yeah. They're on a foundation, a block there. See, it looks like concrete. They got a green plate down there. Yeah. Okay. That's the overlap that I'm talking about. Once you butt that wall up to there, then your double top plate is going to lap on top of this one. It's going to lock that in there really good. Sure.
That's just a treated, that green plate is just treated wood. plate.
That's treated wood. That's treated wood, right, at the bottom, because it's making contact with what? With concrete, right? Yes. It's making contact with concrete. Okay. Overlap the double top plate. See now you see the double, now see how they lap? Okay. Here you're bringing the wall up to it. Now your double top plate overlaps and now you have a strong corner because you drive nails into here. And you drive nails into here. Now you've brought that corner and that wall together, and if you've united them with your double top plate, right? Okay. Now you've made a strong outside corner. Besides that, you would nail in here too. You nail up the corner from this side, and now your exterior corner is solid. Okay, so I'm gonna give you a handout, but I'm gonna have to give you this tomorrow because I was just telling Sister Diane that I didn't make copies of this, and I'm gonna make them and I'll give them to you tomorrow. For framing a wall, you choose straight top and bottom plates. Those you want to be straight. You really don't want crowns on them, especially your tops. The bottoms you may be able to work a little bit as you're nailing it. When you put your snap line and you want to straighten it out, you're nailing it and you straighten it out. But usually you want to pick straight bottom and top plates. Join them together on edge and you tack them so that you can start to mark them. And let me see if I got that coming up. No, I'm gonna have to back it up. And you determine your openings like we said before. Let me go ahead and back up now with let's see. I'm gonna go back now to the layout. Here we go, right here. Okay, so the way you're gonna mark your bottom and top plate, you're gonna mark them together. I'm gonna put them nice and flush on this end, okay? Then I'm gonna take my tape measure and I'm gonna begin to mark my layout. Now, how do you mark a layout? Remember, I hook it, right? I say I'm gonna build, even if it's a shed, I wanna follow the same principles because I'm gonna use sheeting on the outside or what have you, you wanna follow the same principles. So if I make sure these are flush, now you can tack them. If it's a small enough wall, you don't have to tack them. But if it's a big wall, then you want to tack them so that they're not moving on you, they're not shifting on you. I hook my tape measure, and what was my first dimension if I hook? 15 and a quarter. So I mark 15 and a quarter, and then I'll mark an X. That means go. That means where my stud is going to be. Then I'll go, what's next? 31 and a quarter. I'll mark 47 and a quarter. I'll mark 64, 63 and a quarter. And this is basically what I'm doing. You see, I'm keeping it short at 3/4 of an inch because I'm starting from the end. Okay, now I only got one side marked. So what do? Now I take my square, make sure I have an X on both of them. Okay, now I have my bottom and top plate laid out. Okay, once I have that already marked, then I'll take my plates and then I'll lay one down. I'll separate it over here and I'll put my studs in between. And then I can start to nail them, face nail them. This way, once they're face nailed, I stand up the wall and now it's together. You follow me? Now it's together. So that's how you would normally frame a wall. Now in the corner, I would do a stud block stud, correct? Remember how I showed you that? So in the corner, I would do a stud block stud, which basically is, I take two studs and I put another one in between or blocks in between to build it up, nail those together, and now this is one solid corner. It's a stud block stud, okay? So there I have the layout for a wall. And then here he's doing it flatwise, okay? You can do that also. You can lay him like that. The reason I do it like this, I find it easier. Now, if you're getting started, and the way he's doing it there is also a good idea, and you want to kind of be more precise, you can bring these down. You can bring these down and mark them there as well. So that when you have your stud there, you see the mark on this side. Okay, I'm in the habit of just going with the mark that I have there, and I can line it up and I can nail it. But some would like to nail it like that, and there's nothing wrong with that. Because now you have more direction of your partition. See how he's got a partition? He's got 3 studs. He's got one in the middle where your wall's gonna butt, and then 2 studs on each side, so that when you stand up that wall, in each room, you have a nailer. See, once you stand up that wall, see he's got his block there? Once you stand up that wall, now you have a nailer in that room, and you have a nailer for this room. You follow me? Right. Exactly. So that's what that's for. And then here you have how it falls into place. Yes.
Okay, hold on.
And you always put it next where your stud goes, because if somebody else is helping you, let's say for instance we're doing a work bee and we're working on a wall, and then you ask them, you go ahead and start putting put the studs, nail the studs together. Somebody grabs a hammer, grabs a handful of nails, and you don't have a next, and now he puts it on the wrong side. I said, well, I didn't know what side I was supposed to put it on. And you stand up the wall, and you said, why are those studs crooked? Some of those are on one side, one on the other. Well, now you have a next. Now everybody knows where the stud goes. You see? Right. Exactly. So that's why you would mark it. With what they call mark and go. If you're dealing with someone who's laying out with you, you know what? Go mark and back. Then you go put your stud on the other side. Mark and back. Mark and go. So you want to make sure that you put your mark on the right side, so that whoever is doing that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and move up here really quickly, and then I'm going to give somebody an opportunity to come over here. I'm going to show you how. I'm going to get on this right now just because of time, and but I wanted some of you to try out. Let me stop right. Where was I? Right here. I'm going to stop right here, and then I could talk a little bit. Somebody had asked me about steps. And I'm going to tell them about, go into that a little bit. But first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have somebody come up here. I'm going to talk about the sawhorses I didn't talk about yesterday. I like these in particular. I have some at home the same, but they're already pretty old. And so I decided to buy some new ones anyways, because it's always good to have an extra set of sawhorses. But, also so they would look nicer here in the class. But the reason I like these sawhorses is because, first, I like the fact that they fold. Okay, they fold nicely. I like the fact that they have a tray in the bottom, but I also like the fact that you can adjust these, for different heights. So you can put them at different heights, and they're very practical. I like that. So it makes it really nice, especially if you're working in an area where it's not perfectly level, it's sloped or what have you. So that's one of the reasons why I went ahead and bought me another pair of these. I bought these at Home Depot. These were 49 or 59 a piece, I believe. Yeah. Um, the other thing is I can always change this 2x if I damage it when I'm cutting or something, So you can switch this 2x out of there and put a fresh one. I also like the fact that if I wanted to, I could take this one out and I could put a longer 2x. If I had to paint a bunch of pieces of wood, there's different ways of doing that. But I just like the versatility in these. There's a lot of different types of sawhorses that you can buy. There's some metal ones that really fold, nicely as well. But like I said, I just happen to like them. I also have sawhorses that I have made, which really I prefer to use even more than these. But those are so bulky that I just leave those I work with those at home. But for transportation, mobility, these are very practical. I like them a lot, and they're pretty strong. I mean, I've put a lot of weight on these, so they're pretty strong. Yeah, and they store pretty easy. Correct. Yeah, there's some that store even less. But like I said, I just like the fact that this has a tray, and I can set something down there, And one more thing I forgot to mention yesterday is about a chisel. It's not a bad idea to have a chisel, and I'm going to have to add that to my rough carpentry list. But you want to be careful with a chisel. First of all, a wood chisel. This is a wood chisel. There's different types of chisel. There's cold chisels, and this one in particular is a carpenter's wood chisel. This is what you call a butt chisel because it's got the steel end on it. You see that? This is designed to take blows. There's chisels that are all plastic. okay, that are all solid, like this material here, acrylic or plastic, and it's not designed to get blows. You'll just shatter it, okay? Those are more like for paring. You could take the chisel and you could pair with it, okay? But this one I can use it. I like it's rough carpentry, so I like the fact that I can use it to notch something out, and make something work. Now the chisel typically is made by a certain temperature. They take it to a certain temperature so that the steel is not too brittle and it is not too soft. So the idea with sharpening a chisel is you don't want to use high speed. If you use high speed, you're gonna heat it up, and now the edge becomes brittle. Now this chisel, I had it perfectly sharpened, but I lent it to someone in the last project we were at, and look at what happened. It's got chipped. Yeah, they must have hit a nail or something. And I'm very, very particular about certain tools, lending them. And I was afraid. They said, "Can I borrow that chisel?" I'm like, "Please be careful with it." So here's your chisel back, and I said, like, and the thing about it is, here's the big issue. I think it's just a lack of skill, a lack of knowing how to use a chisel. I asked them, "Do you know how to use a chisel?" "Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah." But but it could have been dropped. It could have been. So you have to be careful with your tools. Remember, Jesus was careful with his tools, and that's why I hesitated. Not because I don't want to share, but because I like to take care of my tools. And I'll be honest with you. I don't damage my tools, and my tools last me a long time. I mean, I don't just throw them out. I don't like them sitting out in the weather and nothing like that. I like to protect and take care of my tools, as Jesus did, right? But the problem is that when that happens, I have to now take that all the way down. I have to take all of that to bring it back to get rid of that. I can't just get rid of it. I need to take that all the way down until that finally is gone, right? This is only for wood. It's a wood chisel. They have chisels that are made for steel and for concrete, okay? But this is not a concrete or a chisel to be used like that.
You know what they say when you go to the store in New York? They say you go to the store and you come walking in the store and it's a glass shop. They say you break, you pay.
Yeah, 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 yeah. All right, but no, I had to be Christ-like about it, and I'm glad I was, by the grace of God. All right, so I'm gonna give you a little bit of a little practice so that you can learn how to use a saw, just a typical hand saw. You don't necessarily, like I said, in your first project, you may not want to go and invest in a skill saw. I'll show you how to use the worm drive safely, but I'm going to show you how to use the hand saw. Now, the first thing you would obviously do, you would measure what you're going to cut, and then you would take your tape measure, or you measure, and then what was this called again? A square or a speed square, right? And then you take it and you mark it. You want to make sure that this is up against there, so that you get that particular. I've seen some people do this, and it's not. No, you got to make sure it's on there, and then you mark it. Okay. Now before that, I wanted to give somebody an opportunity to sharpen a pencil. So when you sharpen a pencil, as you remember before, you just started out. Does anybody want to give it a try? Anybody want to sharpen a pencil? Who wants to try it? Okay, you sharpen it, you keep it.
All right.
All right.
From the very beginning.
Yes. All right.
You was sitting here?
No, you can do it up here.
Oh, stand
Yes. Yes, we want to do it up here because we want the viewers. Yes. To see. All right. Okay. So always sharpen it away, and you notice how I did it. You just make sure you sharpen the pencil away from it. You can use this. You can use this thumb for leverage. Okay, if you need to.
Uh-huh.
So I'll give you that, and I give you a pencil,
Okay.
and sharpen a carpenter's pencil. You can open up the blade completely. I would.
Oh, really?
Yes. Open it up completely, and just do it carefully.
Go around.
Yes. She was here yesterday, so she knows how it's done. She saw me sharpen the pencil yesterday. Yes.
This take a long time.
I think we still
Go
got.
deeper.
Yes.
Ah,
Not too hard, it didn't break.
okay.
All right.
Where do you find those pencils?
You can find them just about any lumber yard or any Home Depot. Yeah. Yep. They'll have carpenter pencils.
Not enough money in lumber yard, they'll give you.
Yeah, a lot of times, yeah, we get them for free when we buy enough lumber from them. Yeah. While she's doing that, I'm gonna go ahead and talk a little bit about how to use a handsaw. You're gonna have, first of all, in your stock, you're gonna have what's called the waste side. The what? Waste side. The waste side is what the saw is gonna take away when you cut it, because once you start cutting, something's gonna end up being. So you're gonna have the waste side. So I want to make sure that I'm running my saw on the waste side. So if I measured from there to here, and this is the board that I need, I want to make sure that I'm cutting on which side? On the waste side. Okay. Yes. Yes. For some reason, I've seen that mistake done a lot, where they mark it and then they'll cut on the side where they need the lumber. And now you've shorted yourself by that eighth of an inch. So you want to make sure that you cut on the waste side. Now, the way to use a handsaw is you first are going to do what is called a kerf. Okay, you're going to do a saw kerf. And the way you do the saw kerf, you're going to get your thumb, you're going to get above the blade side, okay? And I'll wait till you're done maybe so that you can get a chance to watch this. And that looks pretty good. I may say that, well, you're almost there. Yeah.
But does it have to be pointed?
It should be pointy.
Okay.
Yeah, it should be pointy. Yeah. It should be pointy. I think she got the idea though. That's the idea, to get the pencil. They do have pencils, sharpeners that you can use for that. And she's like, no, now you tell me. but it's good to develop the skill. It's good to develop the skill. I mean, that little sharpener. I used to, at first I said, yeah, let me give it a try. And then I lost it. I'm like, where is that sharpener? And I put it in my tool belt. I think I lent it to somebody and I said, we don't need a sharpener. It's just so much quicker. That doesn't look too bad. Yeah. Well, here's what you kind of want to, something like that.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So you want to get to a point. Okay. All right. Well, that's your pencil.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
I got it.
All right.
I got the point.
Okay, you got the point. Very good. All right. Okay, so the saw curve, you're going to do at least 2 or 3 pulls, not pushes right now, only pulls. So I'm going to put it on there. I'm going to go, I'll put a little pressure on the saw. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. Now I have a little curve where the saw is going to stay. Okay, right there is already a spot where the saw sits in this groove. I want to make sure that I get my hand now away from there, right? You don't want it near there. Now, the saw is cutting in the down motion, not the up motion. Okay, the saw, you pull up gently, and then you give it a little bit of the weight of your arm. Okay, all right. So, okay, but I'm gonna have you guys try it. Okay, I want you guys to try it. I want someone to come up here and square up 2 or 3 inches. All right, there you go, my brother. Come on right up. Yes. Take your pencil, the speed square. You don't need the tape measure, but yeah, we got one right here too if you want. Yeah, either or. And then you're gonna square up, just a little block, maybe about 2 or 3 inches. Okay, you want to use that preferably. You want to use that in that direction there. The way he just grabbed it, I want to make a point. So you grab your square. You want to grab it from this side here. So like that, my brother. You're gonna bring it down, and then you're gonna make a scribe there. Mm-hmm.
Like this?
No, okay, very good, like that. Very good, very good. Okay, all right. Then you can put your pencil on there. You grab your saw. Now remember. Let me move that over a little bit. Remember what I did with my thumb. Let me get on this side here. Where's your thumb? Were you able to look at where I put my thumb? Okay, all right. I'm gonna go ahead and give you one. You can stand on that side a little bit. I'm gonna do one curve, and then you're gonna do the other curves. So what I did is I took my thumb up high. See my thumb? A guide. Because if I do this, it can move. So here my thumb. See my thumb is just so that this is just so that it can glide. Not down here, but up here. Okay. So I do this and I create a curve. Okay. I'm gonna have you do the rest. Do that like 2 or 3 times. Use your thumb up high so that you create that curve. Right.
Thumb up.
Do it again. Give me one more, just in case. Okay. Okay, let's stop right there. See now, he's got his curve there. That's where the saw blade is gonna sit, okay? Now you're gonna put your hand down and you're gonna hold it solid. This left arm is gonna hold that board solid, and then you're gonna cut, your cut motion is down. Easy up, and you cut down.
So motion down?
Yes, sir, yes, sir. And use the full, if you can, use the fullness of the saw. There we go. There you go. Don't be afraid to blow on it too. Blow on it so you get the sawdust out. There you go. Nice. There we go. Use the full length of the saw. Very good. All right. All right. Very good. Except I'll take. Okay. Now. Okay. So he did veer off the mark. Okay. But nevertheless, he did good. He started getting the motion in. You started getting the motion. Very good, my brother. Thank you. All right. Okay, sister. You go ahead and. If he gets off track, then you may have to go back and obviously with the handsaw, it's going to be hard to rectify it.
I was wondering if because he's not fully, the extension of his arm was not.
A little bit more extension is good, but the idea, that's why I told him to blow on the area where you're working. It's a good idea to keep blowing the sawdust so that you can see where the mark is at. Right. Okay. Now, before you do that, sister, always make sure that you got this nicely tucked.
Nicely tucked?
Yes, yes. Now you want to make sure that the pencil is in this position right here.
Oh.
Now I'm going to show you a little trick, sister. Let's say, for instance, I marked that, and here's my mark, right? That's what I want to cut. I will put my pencil on that mark, right? Then I will bring my square to that mark. Then I'll mark it. Yes. Because sometimes when you put this on there, like what you were doing now, now you're not as accurate. So I sometimes like to mark it. I'll put my pencil on my mark, then I'll bring the square, then I'll mark it. Yeah. Okay? So, okay, you got that marked already. Yes. I beg your pardon?
It's important to mark one time.
Yes, you want to mark one time and as accurate as possible. Now, again, so you want to get your thumb, okay? Yes, right where it's, and you get your thumb up high a little bit. So you want to do this. See how I got my thumb, sister? Okay. So you want your thumb? Right. Let me put it right there first, right there. Yeah. Yeah. Her thumb is keeping the blade away from going to her finger. So that's why you want the thumb there. Yeah. Okay, so just three pulls. Just gently. One, maybe four.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, like that. Maybe five. Keep going, sister. A little bit more. That's okay. You'd rather have a good curve so you have your blade sitting yourself. Give me a couple more. That'd be fine.
Maybe 6.
Okay. That's okay. That's okay. That should be good. That should be good. Okay, now put your hand away from your saw right there and put pressure down so you hold that. Now, you want to work the right arm gently. You don't want to do a lot of force. Let the saw first begin to do the work, and then you could start putting force into it. Because if you put a lot of force into it, you may fight it, and the teeth will just sink. So gently pull it up, and then now go down. That's okay. That's okay. That's okay.
Okay.
Use the full length of the saw if you can,
Okay.
and then you want to do this motion. There you go. There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
You use the full length.
Stuck, yeah.
Okay. Use the full length of the saw. Just take your time. If it gets hard, just softly use the saw. Even if it feels like it's not cutting anything. There you go. Even if it feels like it's not cutting. Yes. Yes. All right. All right. You didn't give up. Praise the Lord. All right. All right. Okay. So it takes technique. She went off the line too. So it does take technique, you know. Anybody want to give it a try? Okay. All right. Then you. She'll come and then you. But it's
So your Lopez, do you think we need to practice before we start doing this?
well, this is, you know, you can practice at home, you know. Like I said, you don't have to. I'm going to show you how to properly use an electric skill saw, a worm drive, because the power tools could be a lot more dangerous, you know. Right. Now you want to, so you want to do the square, just like that, okay? And then mark it from top to bottom, right? Okay, very good. You can just lay that down there, and then you remember your curve, right? Yeah. So I'm going to get that like that. So let me get rid of this one here for now. No, normally you want to get used to developing that skill to hold it, you know, hold it there. Okay. Yes, just gently. Don't put a lot of pressure. Let the weight of the saw do the curve. There you go. Yes. Yeah, let the weight of the saw create the curve. Maybe one more time, sure. Okay, now put your hand on this side of the saw, right there. Right. And then so put your hand down firmly, like that, like that. Yeah, just make, yeah. You pull the full length, and then you push the full length. When you push, just let the weight of the saw do it for now, so you get used to the motion. Almost like you're not even putting pressure on it. Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. There you go. The weight of your arm. Let the weight of your arm come down on the saw. Very good. That sounds really nice. And you could blow the sawdust every once in a while. There you go. So you can see her cut. She's staying on line. That's good. Yes. Yes. All right. Very good. All right. Yes, amen. All right. She did pretty good. Look at the line. You see it? She stayed on the waist side. That was nice and straight. That was very good. Very good. That's okay. That's all right. Who was next? My young man, my young brother here. All right. Okay. Let me give you that. A pencil. You remember how to use the square? Yes, sir. You can come maybe more closer to that. It's right there. That's good. It's not fully touching though. Yeah, so what you can do is when you do this, when you take your square, I like to put my thumb over here. See on this side? Because then I know that it's right on there. Okay? I like to either that, you know, not over here, but over here, I like to make sure that it's on there. Yeah, exactly. So you want to make sure that that's on there, and then you make your line. All right. Very good. Okay. Then you can put it in your sawhorse, and then grab the saw. And then do the same thing. You're going to put your thumb right. Get your saw on a diagonal, right? 45-degree angle, right there. Stay on your waist side. Give yourself about 3 or 4 curves. The full length of the saw if you can. So take your saw a little bit further down when you do that. There you go.
Like that.
Give you one more, maybe one more. Okay, now get your hand on this side, and you hold it steady, and go ahead. Let the saw do the work at first, especially, not you. Okay. Yeah. If you're gonna push down, just let the weight of your arm push down on it, but don't put no pressure down on the wood. There you go. There you go. There you go. Again. There you go. Again. Use more of the length of the saw. Very good. There is. All right. Very good, brother. All right. There is a way to sharpen them. They sell sharpeners, but most of the time, it's easier to send it to someone who has a sharpening tool nearby. And these last pretty long. I mean, I got like 4 or 5 of them, and I think they're all working just fine right now. But it's good to have these. So anybody want to give it a try? All right. Okay. All right. It's running. Okay. A pencil. Okay. Maybe take off a little bit less. Yeah. Just miss that knot. I don't want you to hit that knot. There you go, right there. Yeah. There you go. All right. So you remember your thumb? Okay, make sure you use your thumb as a guide. Use preferably this part of your thumb. Yeah, like that. Okay, that should be pretty good. I'll put your hand in. Make sure you blow out of it. All right. Very good. Very good. Brought back memories?
Yeah.
All right. All right. Okay. Yes, but it's good to develop the skill. Yes, I'm going to show you very quickly how. Another thing I like about these saws is I'm able to clip my saw on the bottom here. See how it's got this clip? I'm able to put my saw like that. It's very convenient. Yes. I'm gonna recommend you cover your ears because we don't have some folks would rather wear earplugs when you're dealing with power tools. So I'm gonna go ahead and mark this here. And so some of the principles are going to be similar. You keep your hand away from there. I'm not gonna cut right now. All right. You never want the blade to touch the wood when you're going to cut. Okay. You need to keep that blade away until it starts circulating. Okay. I'm going to see if I can turn it just slightly like this. And you want to make sure a couple of things when you're using a power in any saw, but mainly a power tool. I don't want to cut here. What can happen if I cut here? It's gonna drop, number one, and then it's gonna bind. It's gonna bind. What happens is it's very simple. The saw is gonna start to push up against the blade, and now it's fighting, and now the saw can kick back. and they can get hurt, okay? And it'll make it very difficult to cut it. And second is, the wood is gonna collapse. So if I was gonna cut here in the middle, I would need then to do, if I wanted to cut in the middle, I would do this like this, then I would have to create an area where my wood is not going to, see, I can do it up here again, but now my wood is not in danger of binding. So you want to make sure you're clear of binding. You want to make sure that it's right, and that's very important for safety, okay? So in this case, I can cut this long enough that it'll make it from one sawhorse to the other. But sometimes, you're cutting long boards, and you're not cutting off the edge. You just lift it up, and they're very long, and you're not going to slide them over. You lift them up. I'll put a block underneath, and I'll cut right where it's at. But I make sure that it's always free. The side that's going to be cut, it's always going to be free. The other thing is you want to wear always safety glasses. Remember I talked about that? So I want to always make sure you wear safety glasses. They have different sizes, shapes, styles. You got to pick out one that's comfortable, that's going to protect your eyes. And then, like I said, some people like to use earplugs because they just are more cautious than others to protect themselves from the ears. So the way to grab the saw, is very similar to the way you grab the handsaw. You want to put your hand where it's sturdy, and you want to bring your blade. Now, I'll bring my blade where I'm going to be cutting to make sure that I'm clear, okay? But then you want to start your saw, and if you want to put your fingers in your ears, if it's a little too loud, you can go ahead and do so.
Question,
Yes.
how do you line it up with the lines? I see you put it there, but. what do you
Oh,
put it there?
there's a mark right there right now. Oh, very good. Okay, very good. The same principle. It's going to cut on the what side? On the waist side, okay? If I mark from that way this way, then I'm going to cut on my left side because of the mark represents the length that I need. So in this case, I pull my dimension from this way and I marked it. So my blade is going to cut on the waist side. So I bring my saw where I'm going to be cutting, but then I pull away a little bit and I begin the circular motion on it, okay?
What are you looking at?
To line it up,
Oh, okay, very good. The saw has, out of habit, I don't look at this anymore, but, I can just pretty much, I look at this and I look at its perpendicular. If I was to start here, I can see right away, you can see that it's not perpendicular, right? So I kind of eyeball it. That's why I like to first, I get my saw and you get comfortable. You know where you're going to run, you're looking at the mark, but the saw has a mark up here that says 0. Okay, where you can line it up. I rarely use that, not because of the years of using it, but because sometimes this is not as accurate as I would like it to be. So I'm more accurate by looking at the blade and looking at the wood. So when I start cutting, I'm going to go slow into it so that I make sure that I'm cutting on the right side of where my waist side is. Okay, so if you want to plug your ears, I'm going to cut now, and then we'll talk a little bit more about it. Now notice what I did. I lifted it up a little bit, okay? I'm gonna lift it up for 2 reasons. One, so that you can see it, and 2 is so that I don't have to lay down so much. Okay. So a good cut, you should be able to see part of your marking on there. I don't know if you can see it anymore, but you could kind of see a little bit of the pencil mark. A good cut, you'll be able to get right in between the thickness of that pencil line. Okay? Sometimes when you're cutting, somebody will tell you it measures 72.5, but make it strong. So then you'll leave the line completely. Or somebody will say it's just very shy of 70.5 inches. So then maybe I'll just take the line. You see, so you can play with that a little bit. But you notice I went slow, right? I went slow, and you cut on the waist side of the line. So then you play with that accordingly. If it's going to be the exact dimension, I'll do the pencil mark, and I usually try to take right in the center of that pencil mark. I'll try to follow the center of that pencil mark to be as accurate as I can, so that when he puts his stud up there, he'll be like, "Wow, that was just right what I needed." Yes. Okay. So that's basically the way most lumber is going to be cut. This is going to be very practical if you're going to be using it for any kind of repairs, any kind of wood. Use it when you cut stringers. And for instance, let me give you an example of why I would use the handsaw and the skill saw for a stringer. When I run my saw up to this corner, unless I want that to be completely cut out on a 2x, I would have to run my saw past it, right? Because the blade, here's the thickness of the board. the blade is cutting like this, right? Right, and here's where I need my cut. You follow me? So here's my blade. Here's my blade. Right? And when I get to the corner of that cut, I think I accidentally moved this. When I get to the corner of this cut, I cannot make it all the way. Do you follow what I'm saying? So this here corner, this corner here, my saw blade only makes it up to here, but this portion doesn't get cut. So what happens? Now, and I'm going to do it maybe with one of these boards. If you want to, yes. So if you want to cover your ears again, I'm going to go ahead and mark it, and I'll show you why you would use a handsaw. Okay, so I'm going to cut this right now. You notice that if I'm not going to go all the way through, I wait till the blade stops before I do anything. Then I take my saw out. Now, the only reason I lifted this guard up is because when it's an angle, it'll have a hard time sometimes lifting up the guard. But notice where my thumb is at, and notice where my hand is at. It's away from the blade. So I'll do the same thing over here. You notice I wait for it to stop, then I remove my saw. Because while the saw is still in motion, if I try to take it out, if it grabs the wood or something, it can kick, it can cause an accident. So you notice my cut, right? It's not all the way through. What do you think I have to do? I have to take my handsaw now, right? And finish now the cut. Right. See? Now I got my cut completely all the way through. And I went a little bit too far on that one by trying to rush. But see, now I can get my cut all the way through. And that's what happens when you're cutting a set of stairs. So now that you know how to cut it, now let me give you the rough layout on how to get through a set of stairs. This is the basic formula to figure out a set of stairs. You want to have first, you want to determine first your total rise and your total run. Okay? Let's say, for instance, that my stairs are going to come up. Let me use this as an example. I'm going up to this level here, and I'll be able to remove that mark. But let's say that represents my finished floor. This represents my finished floor. And where I'm standing represents my finished floor. From finished floor to finished floor is your total rise. Okay? Whatever my finished floor here is, whatever my finished floor there is my total rise. My total run is the distance that I have from where that landing is at to where I'm going to end up with my stairs. Now, it's more important to first determine your total rise, because first you need to know what you're dealing with as far as rises are concerned. Total rise. Total rise is usually divided by 7. Now, I'm going to give it to you verbally because I did not write it down on the screen. But a total rise is divided by 7, and I'll tell you why. Because all 7s take you to heaven. Because a normal riser is between 7 and 8 inches. In other words, when you go up any one of these steps, anywhere in the building, anywhere in this area, your steps are usually between 7 and 8 inches. That's a normal height for what a person normally would walk. You can go less, and sometimes you got some steps that are nicely laid out long, but you don't want to go over 7. If you go over 7, then you violate the standard code for normal steps. Now, a ladder has 12 inches, 12-inch runs, from 12 inches to 12, but that's different. It's a ladder. Right, it's different. But for normal steps where, elderly or young people or whatever, kids, is between 7 and 8 inches. So I take my total rise and I divide it by 7. Once I divide it by 7, it gives me the amount of risers, not the size. So let's take an example. Does anybody have a calculator? Okay. Okay, use your pencil. 48 inches. Let's take 48 inches as a total rise. 48 inches divided by 7.
6.8.
How much? 6.8. Okay, so now we have 6 risers. Now we're going to take again 48 divided by 6. 8, right? So now we have 6 risers at how many inches? At 8 inches. We're still within the frame of acceptable. Now I could go 7 risers and increase more runs and a less riser. You see the equation here? You're going to have to use your mind here a little bit in the geometry here. So the more risers I add, the more runs I'm going to get. Right. So 7 risers, I'm sorry, in this case we have 6 risers at 8 inches, right? 6 risers will equal 5 runs. I'm going to tell you what a run is right now. So we have a total run and we have a unit run. We have a total rise and we have a unit rise. Okay? Do you follow me so far? We have a total rise and then we have a unit rise. We have a total run and then we have a unit run. Unit meaning 1. Okay. So if I have 6 risers at 8 inches, I have 5 runs, correct? Now, depending what I'm going to use as a tread, okay? My tread board goes on my unit run. My tread is my step. It could be a 2x10 or a 2x12, or it could be a double 2x6, or it could be, a 2x6 and a 2x4, depending what you run. Now, your unit run is usually no more than no less than 9 inches. Okay, your unit run. So I can go anything from 9 to 11 because a tread is 11 and a quarter to 11 and a half. Okay, so if I have the room to run my steps out, I prefer to use a 2x12. So you get a nice wide step, right? Okay. So if I have, let's say for instance, I'm going to make a unit run, I'm going to make it a 10-inch cut. How much will I have of an overhang nosing? If I have a 10-inch unit run, how much will I have of a nosing? Uh,
You said 12.
if it's a 2x12, but what's the actual dimension of a 2x12? Remember? 11 and a half. If I have a 10 and a half inch run, what will I have as a nosing overhang? A 1 inch, right? Okay. Let me see if I got this also up ahead further. No, okay. First, I wanted you to understand what a unit run and a unit rise is. Total rise means from finished floor to finished floor. Total run means the distance that the units runs are gonna equivalent to. So let's go back to the example that we used. I have 6 risers at 8 inches. That means I have 5 runs. Now, if we have 2x12s and I want to make them 10 and a half, excuse me, how much is, I'm sorry, 11 and a half, 10 and a half, how much is 11 and a half? And you could even make them 11 inches and still have only a half an inch overhang, a nosing, that's fine. Let's make, for simplicity, let's make 11-inch unit runs. 11-inch unit runs. How much is 11 times 5? 55. So my total run will be what? 55 inches. Now I can actually measure from that wall out 55, and I can tell you where my stairs are going to land before I cut them. Now let's say, but now let's say all of a sudden, but if I do that, I got the gate that's only giving me 2 feet. It's too close to the gate. I can adjust my runs now. I can now do a 2x10 and make it a 10-inch run, and now I can reduce that. 10 times 5, 50. I just reduced it. Okay? So you can play with the run a lot of times, but you cannot play with the rise in the sense that you got to break it down so that each unit rise is equal. Okay? So now, once I have my total rise, I have my total run, now I have a unit rise and I have a unit run because I divided. It's simple math. It's very simple math. I take a total rise, I divide it by 7 because that's going to give me how many unit risers I have. I ended up with 6.8. So that gives me 6 risers at 8 inches. Now I could go 7 risers and make the step a little bit more comfortable, especially if there's going to be children or elderly. Then I want to go, you know what, I have the room. I'm going to go ahead and take it to 7 risers so that they're not as 8 inch, they're a little bit, more graceful. Right, right. So then now I take my unit riser. Now I'm dividing it. Now I'm making more pieces out of the pie. Do you follow me? I'm making more pieces out of the pie. So I'm dividing that. Okay. Now that we have that established, now we will take, excuse me, our framing square. Remember our framing square yesterday?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Now I take my framing square, and you have what's called the tongue and the body. He has gauges there. He has rafter gauges. And once you set the first one, you just slide it over and slide it over. Now, on my body, I'm going to mark my run. And on the tongue, I'm going to mark my rise. Okay? So the body will take the run and the tongue will take the rise. And I'm going to scribe that on my 2x all the way across, all the way across. Let me see if I can see a mark here. Yeah. So in essence, that's what he ended up at. Now, this one, he reinforced it. It is very, very well reinforced. A little too much, but depending what they got going up there. This is where we have our mark. You see the framing square? Okay. A framing square. I usually like to mark the outside. He marked it on the inside, but I don't like using the inside. I prefer to use the outside, and I use my run and my rise. And then I'll slide that over, and then I'll put this framing square at 10 inches. I'll put it right in that mark, and I'll mark my run and my rise again. My 7.5 inches, in this case, he's got 7.5. And I'll keep sliding that how many times? 6 times, because I got 6 risers, right? I slide it 6 times because I got 6 risers. Now, when I figure that last one out, I got to make a compensation because I'm going to add a 2x on top of that. So I need to square this down across and across. But I need to take this bottom, I got to take 1.5 inches off of that, because when I add that board on top, if I don't, I'm going to end up with a unit rise plus 1.5 inches. I'm going to go from 8 to 9.5. And my first step is going to be 9.5 inches. I got to drop the thickness of the tread, right? Okay. So here he has the stringer in place. He's fastening it now. Now you can put some blocking in there, and now you drive some screws with your impact driver, remember? Okay. And now he's adding, like I said, blocking. Now you have your stringer. This is called a stringer. Okay. It's called a stringer. And the same principle, let me see if I'm got more slides in here. No. So the same principle would be, I'm sorry, let me back up here again. So here you have, here you have where you make the compensation here, okay? Now he only did it 1 inch. He may be using 1 inch tread board. This could be an inside stair, because inside stairs, they have pine boards that are treads that are only 1 inch thick. If it's an inside, if it's an outside porch, then you have 1.5 inches. But they make 1 inch pine, because these 1 inch board treads, they make them with a bull nose. A really nice bull nose. So you can buy these and already you have them made, so that all you do is cut them to size. Yes, a bull nose is and thank you for clarifying that. A bull nose is, here's your conventional lumber. A bull nose is like that. Okay, it's basically, they give you a round edge. Okay, and each step does this. It's a little more graceful again, a little more graceful than the edge like that from an outdoor. Okay, and just very quickly, because I know we're running out of time, very quickly, the same principle would go with rafters. Okay, you take what is called a total span, and this may be too much for the last 1 minute that we have, but you take a total span, you divide it in half, and it gives you a total run, kind of like we have the steps. Okay. The total run is divided again depending on the pitch of the roof. I'll tell you what, I'm not going to confuse you with that. I'm just going to tell you how a roof is determined. A roof is determined by how many inches it goes up every 12 inches. Okay? In this case, it is an 8-12. All right, it means it goes up 8 inches every 12 inches. Okay, so every 1 foot, every 12 inches, it goes up 8 inches. Okay, now if I have a roof that goes up 3 inches every 12 inches, is that a steep roof or no? Not very steep. It only goes up 3 inches every 12 inches. If I have a roof that goes up 12 inches every 12 inches, that's a very steep roof, right? If I have a roof that goes up 14 inches every 12 inches, that's a very steep roof. And you see some of these, that are very like 16, 18 inch, 12, for some of these fancy homes or cathedrals, what have you. That's the way a roof is determined. It's determined by the 12-inch base number. Okay, so at least you understand the way the roof works. And maybe we can touch on this tomorrow, and then go into um, cutting wood for the winter, and how to fell a tree and cut wood. It is 11:30. I don't want to keep anybody from other things that they have to do. Is there any questions in relation to what we've been talking? And this is pine wood. Yes, there's different types of pine. Usually, the harder woods, like your southern yellow pine, is a harder, more structural wood. White pine is this is more like a white pine or a spruce. Yeah. So yeah, but this is a pine, and this is your typical framing material. So yeah. Any other questions? Okay. If not, if we'll go ahead, and those of you that can kneel, we're going to finish with a word of prayer. Father in heaven, we want to thank you, Lord, for the things that you're willing to show us. Lord, we want to continue to develop skill for your honor and your glory, Lord. Help us to learn, not just for ourselves, Lord, so that we can also be a blessing to others, Lord. Give us, Lord, wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, even of the things that are practical, even in the skill, Lord. We need your guidance. Thank you, Lord. We give you the praise and the glory, Lord, for everything that we will continue to put in practice. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen.
With grief and shame weighed down, now scornfully surrounded with thorns.